Do you know where one of the most dangerous places to be is for a sports fan? That's being stuck in a perpetual state of misguided rage. So much so to the point where you can't see the reason in reasonable things. Cowboys fans have become this way as it pertains to Stephen Jones in the front office, which I don't completely blame y'all for, because the front office hasn't done much to instill much confidence in you. But I have to say, a lot of the criticisms about the front office, while some are factual, a lot of them are so overblown to the point to where you guys can't even sit down and actually be able to listen for the things that are important to hear anytime these guys are talking. By and large part, Stephen Jones is cheap. Stephen Jones is arrogant as it pertains to how he handles his business, but Stephen Jones is not a liar. He has not really lied to us as it pertains to his approach and how he's going to be handling things in these off seasons. He's never come out and told us he's going to make these blockbuster signings or blockbuster trades and then absolutely nothing happens. He's always been pretty honest as it pertains to how he does business, and that's why it's important that we don't just dismiss everything that's said due to us just being upset about losing. Now, obviously, one of the hottest topics right now is whether or not the Cowboys are going to sign Dak Prescott to a contract extension. And we actually had a video a week or two ago where we heard from Dak Prescott as it pertains to this topic, and I told you in that video, by his body language, by how he was talking, it seemed like things were going in a positive direction. And now that has been all but confirmed with the comments made by Stephen Jones while doing an appearance on Scoop City with Diana Rossini and Chase Daniels. All right, so here are the highlights from Cowboys Executive Vice President Stephen Jones on episode 2 of The Athletics on the Scoop City podcast. Number 1, Stephen was first asked about where things stand with contract extensions for Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Micah Parsons. Jones' response went as follows: those things just take time when you're talking about the amount of money involved. And of course, we're trying a little bit to play Houdini and how to keep all these guys around Dak and keep these players we were fortunate enough to draft. When you start stacking them up like that, it's a challenge. It's not that it's not doable, but you certainly got to have some give and take if you want to do that. All right, very important there. For those of y'all that keep saying, it's not possible for them to sign Dak, Micah, and CeeDee. He just told you it is in fact doable. They just have to move some other parts around, and they got to make sure that they structure these deals in a way to where they're not going to be shooting themselves in the foot on one of the years of these deals because they're having to sign somebody else they couldn't sign because so much money is loaded into one of these particular years. So I understand if they're looking at not just Dak, CeeDee, and Micah, they're looking at how will signing Dak impact our ability or the timing of when we re-sign a Tyler Smith or when we re-sign a Deron Bland or when we give another contract to a Sam Williams or a Osa Odigizua, right? So I completely understand that. Anybody with any measure of common sense should be able to understand this concept. The NFL works by salary cap. If you're looking at the cap by percentages, right, and you got a quarterback that's going to be taking up 20 to 30%, and then you got a receiver that's going to take up another 15 to 20%, and then you got a defensive end that's going to take up another 15 to 20%. Guess what? By the time you get done with those 3 guys, you have about 70% of your cap to work with to sign the other 50 dudes that you need on your roster. So it is going to take some time when you're in a position where you have to pay these uber talented players, because think about it, guys, the Cowboys are kind of in a unique position. They're one of the only teams in the league that have to pay these size contracts to this many players that they actually drafted on their teams. Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, and like he's going to mention in just a little bit, we also have 3 other guys currently making over $20 million per season. That stuff matters. That stuff absolutely matters. And I think just trying to look at this objectively and not going in already with a preconceived notion of, oh, he's cheap, he's lying, he blah, 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 looking for conspiracy theories, which a lot of you guys got a bad habit of doing. Y'all look for conspiracy theories and things instead of looking at what the reality is, figuring out if the reality makes sense. If it doesn't, then that's when you start to try to figure out what's actually going on. But if the reality of what's being said or done makes sense, then go with reality. Damn. But either way, he says, I know the Vikings there with Jefferson, when they made that inordinate deal at the receiver spot, they don't have one player on their team other than Jefferson making over $20 million. That is a big point. That's a big point. Of course, we got a big one in Dak, And we got Trevon Diggs right there. And then you got Zach Martin and D-Law. And that's not even counting CeeDee and Micah right there. So those are already 4 guys making over $20 million, where we're looking at teams like the Vikings giving Justin Jefferson that $35 million a season. Like, oh, the Cowboys, you gotta go hurp and give that. But we're not actually looking at the Vikings salary cap situation as a whole and realizing, oh, they can do that. They don't have anybody else to pay on their team right now, or anybody else that they probably want to pay on their team right now. So they absolutely can go out and make that type of move quicker than a team that would have to balance the books a little bit, in a sense, because you have other guys on your roster that are actually worth being paid. So to me, that does kind of pass the smell test as it pertains to a reasoning as to why our deals are getting done slower than some of these other teams. I'm sure if we go look at most of the other teams that have signed their guys quickly or anything like that, they're either going to be teams that didn't make the playoffs, struggling teams, teams that are on the ascension, or teams that don't have a jam-packed roster full of all pros, right? The Eagles probably the one team that seems to circumvent all the challenges that the Cowboys face as it pertains to their salary caps. But at the same time, I can also tell you this: the Eagles lost a ton of players this offseason. They lost a ton of players this offseason, and they had to take a couple of casualties, getting rid of their best pass rusher and the guy like Hassan Reddick. So it's not like the Eagles are able to do this without casualty as well. And I think as Cowboys fans, sometimes we get lost in that. Sometimes we see Howie and them making all these moves, and we're like, oh, they're the best GMs ever. But because we're Cowboys fans and not Eagles fans, we're not actually privy to all the small things that are going on prior to these big moves and big signings being made. We're not privy to the players that they're having to miss out on. We're not privy to the areas of that roster or that team that the fan base and the media feels like as a whole because they had to pay other guys, right? Also, the Eagles are in a different phase of their development. A lot of their guys, they just now had to start paying. They just now had to start paying a quarterback. So they're going to start to pay the piper a little bit here in a couple of years, and chances are we're going to start hearing about how the Eagles can't make certain signings or do certain things because they're paying guys like Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown all this damn money, right? So this does kind of pass a smell test for me. Howie Long has always been more aggressive. The Eagles have always traditionally been one of the first teams to make moves. The Cowboys have always traditionally been one of the last teams to make moves. So I'm not going to sit here making a big deal because they're essentially operating as business as usual right now. But either way, he says, it's no excuses. We think we can get this done. We know we can get it done, but it just takes time. Absolutely love this. So essentially, they're trying to get it done. They know they can get it done, and they're not making an excuse. Right here, this says more than anything right here in this comment to me. The fact that Stephen Jones took the built-in excuse out of, oh, it was just not possible for us to get all 3 guys done, so that's why we can only pay CeeDee and Micah, right? We have to let go of Dak. He essentially eliminated that possibility of having that excuse. He eliminated it by saying it's doable. He let the fans know it's doable. So guess what? Now, if anything, they put a little bit more pressure on themselves because now they just let everyone know that yes, it is possible to get all 3 guys paid, and that's what we are trying to do right now, right? So let's keep it moving because there are other comments made. Brandon Lurie writes, number 2, at Chase Daniel, he asked about his confidence level in getting a deal done with Dak Prescott and if there's a deadline. Jones said, the answer to that question is that we are optimistic that we can get these guys done. I know Dak. Our goal is to get him done. He knows that. We're having conversations with his agent, with Dak personally, both Jerry and myself, and Dak Prescott echoed the same sentiment the last time we covered him making comments, right? So very interesting stuff there. He knows our goal is to keep him here. He also understands the challenges, and you see what happens to teams when you have these top price quarterbacks at some point. It's a challenge to keep everybody. Obviously, the Chiefs are an example of that, but they were able to survive not keeping Tyreek Hill and some other top players. I think they let one of the top corners in the league go after this season. You have to make some tough choices along the way, but we're optimistic that we can do that. And guys, just because he brought up receiver and corner stuff, he's not directly talking about CeeDee. They have other guys coming up that are going to have to get their deals redone. They have DeMarcus Lawrence coming up that's going to need a new deal. They're probably going to have to let him go. DeMarcus Lawrence is probably going to be a cap casualty. They have guys like Osa Odighizuwa and Deron Bland and Zach Martin, and some of these other guys are coming up that they're probably going to either hope retire, like in Zach Martin's case, or they're probably going to have to let go. They're not going going to let CeeDee Lamb go. Don't take it like that. He's just saying there's places we're going to have to shave money off where you wouldn't have wanted to shave it off, right? He says, we'll continue to grind away on that. And I know between fans and media, that's your job to ask when and can you and what happens if you don't. But our eyes are on the ball in terms of getting these things done. And we're not thinking about what happens if you don't. We're trying to get the job done. Exactly. He just let you know the Cowboys aren't even considering. They aren't even considering thinking about the future without Dak Prescott as their starting quarterback. They're not even considering thinking about what it's going to look like if they don't re-sign their guys, because they're going to re-sign their guys. And anytime Jerry has wanted a player, Jerry has kept a player. That's also one thing that is tried and true with this organization. And by all accounts, it sounds like Jerry wants to keep Dak Prescott. He wants to keep CeeDee Lamb. He wants to keep these guys on this team. The Cowboys are just slow in trying to figure out financially how can they do that, get these deals done, but also not completely handcuff themselves to where they have to watch their best developed players that came up in their system just walk away for nothing next season, right? So I think that's kind of where they are right now, and I think that's kind of what's trying to be figured out outside of the details of some of these contracts, because I'm gonna let y'all know right now, some of these dudes could be asking for fully guaranteed contracts. Now, I'm not going to further expand upon that, but I'm just saying, I heard through the grapevine, that's one of the holdups for Dak's contract right now is the guarantee number on it. So, just saying. Either way, number 3, Diana Russini reiterated how confident Stephen sounded at the league meetings in October about believing Dak and that he's the guy. She said it sounds like the same sentiment is still held in Dallas, and she is optimistic it will get done. Jones responded with, I think at the end of the day, a lot of people want to somewhat be critical of the organization, of Jerry and myself, of Coach McCarthy, of our team, and of course Dak being the quarterback gets the brunt of it. You know that, Chase, of our success in the playoffs. At the same time, you got to certainly recognize that we've won 36 regular season games in 3 years, which of course we're playing 17 now. I think the Patriots may have done that, doing it in 16 games on a 3-year run. We're having really great success in the regular season, and there's no question I understand the criticism from our fans. I understand the criticism from media. We all understand that in terms of not winning the big game in the playoffs, and we certainly got to take the next step. I know we can go out there and no one's assuming anything and have another great regular season, and no one's going to really give, hey, they're going to get it done this time until they see it, and we understand that. We put ourselves in that position with our playoff winning percentage, and we do have to take that next step, but I certainly believe that we can do it. All right, again here, I told y'all, Stephen in the front office, business-wise, take your fan hat off, take your love for winning Super Bowls off your head. Business-wise, the Cowboys are probably in the best position they've been in decades. They're making a ton of money. The team is competitive. It has stars all over it. It has marketable players all over it. And at the end of the day, the team is actually giving you some pretty decent results. Only one team wins at the end of the season. We all understand that. Of course, we all want to see all the players play better. And we all want to see the team do better in the playoffs. But looking at this objectively, taking my Dallas Cowboys fan hat off, the Cowboys are still probably positioned as one of the top 5 or 6 teams in the league every season based off of how they are currently constructed. So they are, without a doubt, undoubtedly experiencing a high degree of success right now, and it's becoming consistent. This is something the Cowboys haven't had in a long time, and I told y'all before, the front office is satisfied. They're happy with the results of what's going on with this team, and that's one of the main reasons I feel like we're not going to see any crazy or outrageous changes, because why rock the boat when the boat is sailing along smoothly in the eyes of the captain? And in the eyes of the captain, this boat is sailing along smoothly. Every now and then we have to go and stop at dock, but it's still, for the most part, a reliable boat. And that's what the Cowboys franchise is right now. It's a reliable boat that every now and then we have to go and stop at dock because we get kicked out the playoffs a little bit too early, and we got to restock and bring on some new passengers and stuff. And then we get back out to sea, and the boat is reliable. It gets us from point A to point B, and then we end up having to take another pit stop because we get knocked out the playoffs. But at the end of the day, this team is in a position right now where it's honestly set up pretty well for the future. That's why I didn't understand the talks that people are having about, oh, the window is closing. The windows. If you honestly think our window is closing, with the way our roster is built, having one of the youngest teams in the league, even our primary players are either entering their prime or about to enter their prime, right? This team's window is wide open. As soon as they get these contracts signed, there's no reason that you can look at this team and say it doesn't have one of the best cores in the entire league, and they're set up for the long term, right? So I think that's all very, very important to keep in mind. The last excerpt from this interview was Stephen was asked about the Cowboys' philosophy regarding contracts, the behind-the-scenes finances, and why they didn't get these done earlier. Jones said, "We're just now to the point where we can do a CeeDee and a Micah, and certainly want to see these things play out." CeeDee had his breakout year this year in terms of really having a mega year in terms of his number and statistics. Of course, Micah just became eligible, and of course, we've done a deal with Dak. After that, we've done Diggs, and we got him done early, and unfortunately, when you're paying these quarterbacks the kind of money these teams are having to pay them, and it's not just a handful of them, I'm sure there's 12 to 16 guys that are making 40 plus million bucks. There is. Then you're restricted to paying 5 or 6 guys. I've been saying this all along. The Cowboys' plan is to pay 6 or 7 dudes, maybe 3 on the defensive side, 4 on the offensive side, and then you draft and replace the rest. I've been saying this all offseason. And believe me, it doesn't feel good to watch a Biotis leave the organization. It doesn't feel good to watch these guys that we've drafted and developed and playing at a good level walk away, but unfortunately, we can't do that now. Now the good news is we feel like we've done a good job of drafting again, and you get the Tyler Guytons of the world, the Cooper BBs of the world, and the Marshawn Nealon, who's a pass rusher. You got to keep bringing these guys in because that's where you get the relief under the cap, is having your young guys play at a high level, and play right away. And that, my friend, is exactly what I've described as the Cowboys game plan as it pertains to roster building and how they're approaching this team. Is they're going to pay a core key group of guys, and they're going to draft to replace all the rest of their players. And if they haven't drafted a guy, then they're going to sign a bridge gap veteran, meaning they're not going to make huge veteran signings. They're going to make veteran signings of some decently known names, because it's still the Cowboys. They still want people to get excited a little bit, right? So they're going to give you those decently named veterans, the Gerald McCoys of the world, the Brandon Carrs, those type of guys. They're going to give you those type of veterans, and then you're just going to have to be okay with those dudes for a season or two until you're able to find, draft, and replace their replacement. That's what the Cowboys are doing. That's our strategy, and to be quite frank, when you have this many all-pros on your team that you're trying to keep under contract and you're trying to keep together, that has to be the strategy. It has to be the strategy. Math tells you it has to be the strategy, right? But either way, sounds like to me, them deals gonna get done, y'all. At this point, it's just a waiting game. And all I'm gonna say is, ooh boy, a lot of people better go into hiding when that breaking news finally hit, because I'm gonna be unbearable when Dak officially re-signs his contract extension with the Cowboys. Either way, we still the same old Cowboys. I'll see you guys on the next one.
Calling me, texting me, paging me, asking me, am I still them boys? Y'all usually check on me. Listen. I'm still them boys. Hey! Woo! Oh, shut up, my boy. Hey! I'm still them boys.